Good evening, everyone. Another Tuesday evening on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you are on Facebook, if you can send me a message, hopefully I can. Oh, hang on, so I can actually see it. Let me know. So really good to see everyone this evening. So we're continuing with our series on gaslighting. We're looking at creating a healthy workplace, a healthy place to work. And in raising gaslighting, a challenge for CEOs and also leaders. So really what I'm going to do this evening, I want to integrate gaslighting and also the challenge for leaders and CEOs. So big welcome to you this, if you're watching live, if you're watching on catch up, if you're watching in different parts of the world. And I'd like to say a big shout out to Daniela Petrovsky. Yes. She contacted me after one of the sessions last week and she was incredibly complimentary, but also I gave an idea, and which I'm using this evening in terms of looking at this whole thing about gaslighting. And you know, last week I looked at how the impact of people who gaslight, there's an impact on them over a period of time, psychologically, emotionally, existentially. Good evening, Sonia. If anyone's on Facebook, please let me know. Just a little note, say hello. That's it. I don't say nothing more than that. I won't even call your name. I just want to know that it's up and running. As you know, last week I looked at the impact of gaslighting on the gaslighter, the impact in terms of psychologically, emotionally, morally, physiologically, ethically. We think they're getting away with it, but actually they're not. So tonight we're going to be looking at creating a healthy workplace. Thank you. But also the challenge for CEOs. So tonight we're looking at, just recapping, the destructiveness of gaslighting. And I just want to say, within the last week, oh, good evening. Good evening. Yes, anyway, I said I won't say any names and I won't. So within the last week, two individuals, one I spoke to pretty recently and somebody during the week asked me about gaslighting in relationships. Well, that's why the idea really came from. So I will be doing a series on gaslighting relationships. Pretty horrendous, but it does happen. I recall it's slightly different when I was working for a hospital many years ago. I won't say which one. And one of my colleagues told me that she was working with a member of staff, and her husband, who was a psychiatrist, was trying to get her sectioned. He was having an affair and he wanted to get her sectioned, and she was perfectly sound. But this guy wanted her out of the way so he could carry on with his illicit relationship. Anyway, that's another conversation for another time. So tonight we're looking at the destructiveness of gaslighting, and then we're going to look at my leadership model. It's something which I've developed over 30 years of being a leader, and also we look at some solutions that the CEO can do, and also for those who are interested, if you want to engage further, 1 hour free consultation, and then after that we can talk further. So I've spoken about the insidious nature of gaslighting and the impact on gaslighters. So, but today I really want to look at the role of the CEO. And so one of the things that is very clear, gaslighters seldom are honest about themselves. It's lies upon deceit, and the web just becomes thicker and more dense and so forth and so forth. However, gaslighting in the workplace can be stopped. It can be erased. It can be stopped. Is it easy? No, it isn't. But this thing I have about leadership. If you are a leader, and I don't mean a leader by the title, but a leader in position and calling, I'm going to say a little bit more, that you really have a moral obligation to look after the people that are working for you. So, as I said before, that gaslighting is where people are intentional. They spin lies and deceit in an attempt to get you to question your perception of reality. And at the extreme end is to also question your sanity. They do all sorts of manner of things to get you into that space. So as you can imagine, the description of gaslighting, and if you've ever met anybody who has been gaslighted, the experience is horrendous. It's not good at all. So here are some of the telltale signs. If you've missed it, just want to say welcome to those of you who might be here for the first time. Also, thank you for those that are sharing my posts, interacting with me, commenting, liking on LinkedIn and so forth. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Really do appreciate it, what you're doing. It just gives me the encouragement to keep going. Some of you have had some horrendous experiences, And I hope through the posts that I offer and other people that in a sense you get some sense of recovery. So here are some of the telltale signs of gaslighting in the workplace. Some of you know already, but here's some of them. Out of the blue, your performance has been questioned. Never been questioned before. So the context is you've made some allegation, possibly. You've seen something, you've reported, and then individuals don't get pleasant. They're not pleasant about it, so they get really nasty. So then your manager starts then to question about your performance, but your performance has never been an issue, and so forth until now. The gaslighter begins to say negative things about you in public. And they spread with rumors, and we've heard the talk about there's kind of mobbing, and also flying monkeys, where they will kind of garner allyship by kind of spreading rumors about you. One of the things I've noticed, and people have told me, that people then, even people who are head of divisions, they are excluded from meetings and emails that they should be attending, emails that they should be receiving. They're excluded. There's a willful, deliberate action to exclude them. Quite often, when you listen to what they're saying, the comments that they've made that cause this situation to happen, they want their department, they want the organization to function better, and the cost of that has been exclusion. So in obvious and subtle ways, people are being discredited, almost to the point where the individual then begins to question their sanity, their sense of perception, start to doubt their own ability, when up until that time they were a really good worker, diligent, met the targets, met the results, brilliant outcomes, and all of a sudden they then start to question their whole kind of how they do things and so forth. So needless to say, the destructiveness of gaslighting is bad. As we know, it's a form of psychological abuse, which is destructive, causing harm to the individual, but also, if it is allowed to continue, there is potential reputational damage to the organization, to the wider public. And a case for that might be Sellafield, Gillian McDermott, something I shared a link some time ago. Fascinating 3-minute interview on LinkedIn. Absolutely brilliant how she was called in to be a consultant at Sellafield, and after a while they asked her to leave because she found things, and as she interviewed people, which then brought to the leadership, and they weren't interested at all. So the whole thing about destructiveness of gaslighting is really important. However, now this is my leadership model, which has been developed over 30 years of being a leader. I did a lot of reflection. I'll say about that in a moment. So models of leadership abound, and I'm not saying that mine is better than any other. It worked for me. It took me a while to kind of get to it. It worked for me, but these are my reflections of after 30 years of being involved in leadership in a voluntary sector organization. So the first thing, one of the things about leaders, you're called to set a new tone. Always called to set a new tone. So I'm very clear. The number one thing about leader is service. Leaders are called to serve people. It's not for dictators. It's not for people that are authoritarian, but you're called to serve individuals. An interesting YouTube video very recently by Dominic Raab, who was one of the key advisors to Boris Johnson during the, and they said Cold War during COVID. He himself kind of was a bit off center. But one of the things he said is, I think it was an interview with Chris Williamson on Modern Wisdom. And he made a comment that politicians have forgotten they are public servants. He said that the career is really short. But once they get in, they forget about who they're meant to be serving, and then it becomes one of self-interest. So I'm very, very clear that when you are a leader, it's about serving people. And what I will say also about power, one of the reasons why we see so much mess in leadership is that power is not about authority, dictatorial, being controlling other. Power is about serving others effectively. And I'm very, very clear on that. And that's something I tried to live out. Had its challenges, but it's something I tried to live out. So number one is service. Number two is innovation. Leaders are never called to maintain the status quo. It could be that you're called in, as I have done in one situation, called in to stabilize things. But leaders are called to bring about new change, innovation, push the boundaries, do something new in creative and inspiring ways. And part of the organization I was with, we used to have our annual conferences, and they were always different. Not because I had the ideas, but the ideas came from the shop floor, so to speak. And we always had brilliant conferences, not down to me at all. It was down to the people who I was serving. Number 3 is really important to me, is psychological safety. And for me, it's more than a buzzword. The book, if you're really interested in books, I might have mentioned this before, a book called Black Box Thinking by Matthew Said, an excellent book. He talks about the aviation industry and how safe and secure it is. And at this point, just a commercial break. If anybody wants to ask a question or make a comment, please do. If you want to, as people are still doing, emailing me after the event, contacting me on YouTube after the event, or on LinkedIn after the event, please feel to do that. Or if you want a personal conversation, that I'm open to that as well. So please feel free to add a comment. Hopefully you can see me clearly. I can see myself clearly. So please, if I'm blurred and fuzzy, please let me know. I've seen some of the broadcasts and they're not good at all. The image is quite distorted, but if you let me know that it's clear, that's kind of really, really good. So Matthew Said talks about black box thinking, taken from the world of aviation, from the aviation industry, and he makes this comment. He said one of the reasons why the aviation industry is so safe, he said, I'd like to do 2 things: change the culture, but also create the environment that so everything, whether major or minor, is reported, is investigated, and then new procedures and practices can take place. But he said they've had to change the culture so that people, if they were reported or something happened and they were the cause of it, they wouldn't be suspended or dismissed and all that type of stuff. So the environment had to change. Psychological safety is you, the leader, creating a space so that your employees can bring ideas to the table or make contributions or make a disagreement without being ridiculed or made fun of in a meeting or a part of the culture of the environment. And one of the things about leaders is some training I do for another organization. If you don't have psychological safety, leaders won't function as they should function because they're forever watching the back. They're watching the back. They don't trust anybody. They don't trust anything. They don't trust the system. They don't trust they'll be supported. So all leaders will do is toe the party line. If you run an organization like that, you're not going to get the best out of people. But if you want to change it, I'll give you some solutions at the towards the end. So, so service, innovation, psychological safety. Now, these are some of the principles of psychological safety. We don't have time to go through all of it, but these are some of them. Open communication. There's a friend of my father's. My father was 5'2", and Mr. Nelson was shorter than him. And these short Caribbean men. And I remember I was about to start a very important role, and he called me one day, and I went to his home, and he looked at me, and he said to me, a word of advice, he says. I was 28, 29 at the time. He said, listening is learning. And I've never forgot that. He's passed away years ago, but he said, listening is learning. And he was absolutely right. So one of the things about psychological safety is open communication, listening also. If you go online, you look at the thing about inclusivity. I tend not to use that term. I take the idea from John Swinton, an academic from Aberdeen University. He says that inclusive is superficial and political. I use the term acceptance and belonging. Inclusivity. Now, let me just say before I go further, I met lots of people who've done lots of EDI or I think it's called something else. So equality, diversity, inclusion. Some people call it diversity, inclusion, and equity. And I've heard lots of comments. I'm sure some good work has been done, but lots of the comments I've been hearing is that, Delroy, this is the tick box. Nothing has changed. We've done loads of these and nothing has changed. And this is not from people of color. These are from people, from these white people who've said this to me. So I've made it very clear that inclusivity is transactional. And some of you may be listening to this and will totally disagree. Please come back to me. Inclusivity is transactional, but acceptance and belonging is relational. And that's the glue that holds everything together. That's the glue that causes or maintains good cohesion in the workplace. It's relationship, and that's how we function as human beings. We can be in a really difficult situation, a work situation, but the relationships we have in the team can be healing, therapeutic, and help us to get through difficult spots in the workplace, even though we're working in difficult environments. So that's something to note of. And also with psychological safety, when mistakes happen, mistakes are normalized and people are encouraged to try again. One of the things I say to individuals, when you make a mistake, whatever it might be, we use the word pants south. We use the phrase, it's not a phrase that I use, it goes tits up, belly up, however you want to describe it. If you can use mistakes as learning moments, if we're able to sit with it and look at it a bit, then we can learn a lot from the mistakes that we make. There's more to share about psychological safety, and if you want to know more at an organizational level and an individual level, please be in contact with me, and I can say more. Building trust is really important in terms of psychological safety, and all of these are the responsibilities of leaders, team leaders. I would also say managers, but certainly top tier leaders and CEOs of organizations. So until recently, I had 4 stages. There was service, innovation, psychological safety, and number 4 is developing others. If you're not developing others as a leader, you're not doing the job of a leader. Essentially what you're doing yourself out of a job. But this is the rub, and hear this. If you're a good leader, you'll never be out of a job, because another organization will want you to develop people. And developing others is something I really, really enjoyed in my last piece of work that I did. So 4 things: service, innovation, psychological safety, developing others, and recently I've added number 5, disciplined introspection. What do I mean by that? Reflective practice. I read an article today, came from Harvard, that many retired CEOs, when they reflect on their career, one of the regrets they have was not doing the introspection, because they realized had they done the introspection, it would have made a difference to their leadership and to them as human beings. So this internal work is incredibly important for leadership. And again, if you want to know more, there's lots of stuff on YouTube. If you want something personal, please be in contact with me, not unless you've seen a coach already. So leadership. So I can't see any comments at the minute. Okay, brilliant. So here we go. As a leader, you set the barometer, you set the temperature of the organization. So how? So I'll say this right at the outset. All what I'm going to say now, I'm not saying it's a walk in the park. Maybe you might have seen my post this morning. Leadership is not a walk in the park. It takes guts to be a good leader. I feel for leaders because I've done it for so long. Am I an expert? No. Have I made mistakes? Loads of them. Have I learned a lot? Yes. Have I got the t-shirt? Yeah, I've got the scars, and I limp as well through 30 years of being a leader. But it can be incredibly invigorating and life-giving to the people that you're serving. So my argument is, so the leader, so the people. I've always said this in one of my last assignments I did. If things are happening bad at the bottom, look what's happening at the top. If things are happening good at the bottom, look what's happening at the top. Leadership influences so much. So these are the things that you as a CEO can do to bring about change, to confront the gaslighter. So listen and believe your people. That's really important. Most of your employees actually come to work to do a good day's work. But if you're not bothered as a leader, that spirit, that attitude contaminates the organization. Then they're not bothered either. But if you're not bothered, they won't be bothered. One of the things I say, don't hide from your employees. You've got things to do. You got people on the ground floor, so to speak, your managers and directors and so forth. But be seen. Just even if they can't get into conversation with you, but be seen. Don't lock yourself in a way in a room that nobody ever gets to see you. So it's really important that you are seen. The other thing that's really important: let people know that they mean something to you. And you don't necessarily have to say it, but do your gesture, how you interact with people, it lets them know that they mean something to you. Though if they don't, it's a sense that you don't have to say, but people can feel it when they mean something to you, or you mean something to them. They can actually feel it. It's really, really important. Something called feedback loops. This is where the staff are encouraged to make a contribution to the organization, how it runs. See, good ideas doesn't have to come from leaders. Good ideas quite often come from people working at the lower end of the ladder, people who have a real vested interest in their careers and the workplace and the organization, and they can be really helpful. So kind of feedback loop is really kind of important. And let me just say this, that leadership must be and is courageous. You must confront or turn your face towards the gaslighter. Quite often, gaslighters are known in organizations and they get away with blue murder because nobody confronts them. I've worked in organizations where people have created mayhem, and management, top tier management leadership, they know who they are, but they will not confront them. So as difficult as it is, you gather the evidence and you sit in a meeting with this individual and you point out what has been done and you make it clear that that behavior is not acceptable. If you're together as a leadership team, that individual has some options. And maybe one of the things, of course, if they open, they might not do it, of course, because they seldom do. If they open up to you, then you can then maybe make a referral for them to seek some help. Because clearly, as I said last week, people who gaslight others, there's some major psychological stuff that's going on. And the work quite often is outside of your remit. So you must learn to cut off the oxygen supply that feeds gaslighters. And if they know they can get away with it, nobody will touch them, they will keep doing it. But as a leader, you have to find the courage from somewhere, because your actions or inaction is affecting the influence of the organization or the department. But what happens if you confront the gaslighter and you do something about it? Your reputation and respect will go through the roof. That's how CEOs become likable. It could be that the employees, the staff, may not like the decisions that you make, but if you listen and people feel listened to and heard and seen, you will always be respected, even though people may disagree with the final decision you take. But there's a level of respect, but also what it does, a level of respect that if you realize you've made a mistake, you own it, you made a decision, and it turns out the right one, your respect goes through the roof and people trust you. That's how they get to like you, by the work that you do. I'm going to close off in a few minutes. So I've said quite a few things in terms of what we can do. Listen to people, but treat people with a level of humanity and respect. Some of the stuff I hear, and I hate the term soft skills, but it's those skills that are really important for you, not for you to get the best out of people, but the video link that I've left in my newsletter with Simon Sinek, he said, leaders ask the wrong question. What can we do to get the best out of, to get the most out of people? He says people are not there to wring stuff out of, but he says as a leader, the question you should be asking is, what can we do to create a space, create an environment so people will want to give of their best? Do you see the difference? As a coach, what can we do to get the best out of people? So he said people are not there to be wrung out, but what can we do to create the space that people will be willingly and voluntarily want to give of their best to the organization? Ultimately, it's down. I'm going to say something now, part of my story. As a leader, I got loads of things wrong. I could point you to lots of people who could tell you, but this is something that I just want to share, and I thought it would be right to do that. That I would admit I'm not the bravest of individuals, and over the years I found it difficult to confront difficult things. I have, But one of the things I learned, that what I don't deal with today will come back tomorrow and bite me big time on my bum. So I didn't need to have too many of those experiences to say, do you know what? Let me deal with this today, as horrible as it is. I don't want something coming back in 6 months' time and really nipping me on my backside. It happened a few times, but as time went on, it didn't happen at all, because I dealt with things as best as I could. So I'm going to finish as I'm finishing. I'd be really naive to think for 1 minute that you can create a workplace with no without people problems. Whilst you've got people, there'll always be problems. But your work as a CEO, as much as you might hate it, you deal with things quickly. Well, in fact, this is what happened. You deal with things quickly. People respect you, and sometimes if you create the space, people can sort stuff out without you getting involved. And that's what I learned in the end. It was when we used to meet up, when I had all these individuals I worked with. We meet up every 2 months. We'd have a chat, a long chat, maybe what time? I think it was 10 till 1. And we always finish with food. And then later on, I discovered that when problems happened in certain areas and certain districts, I was never informed. They would speak with each other, get it sorted. And when we got to the bottom of the meeting, that's when I'd heard that things had taken place and they sorted it. It was fantastic. So I'm going to end with this personal story. Years ago, I was a regional leader, and I was running a business meeting. These meetings, this particular place was known for hostility for decades, and also it was renowned for kind of intense interactions and so forth. And I'd learned how to handle myself calmly, because I'll tell you now, in the early days of leadership, I could give as good as I get. I really can. But I learned over the years that I was there to show a different model of leadership, which was not hostile and confrontational as previous leaderships had been. One particular evening, we were having this business meeting. I was harangued. I was publicly harangued by a senior leader, called all sorts. And I remember thinking, oh God, how can I respond to this without retaliating? And I sat down, and there was quietness, and 2 people stood up and really put this individual in the place. I didn't have to say a word. And when the meeting ended, he grabbed his stuff and he stormed off out of the building. And that was that. A few days later, though, we were having a conversation, me and a few others, and there was a reflection on the meeting. So it wasn't a meeting. We just gathered doing something. And one woman said something to me that I've never, ever forgotten. And this is what she said. Delroy, you've caused that to happen. And I said to her, caused what? She said, you've given the quiet voices the power to speak. And that was said over 15, 16, maybe 17 years ago. And I have never, ever forgotten it. So I'm encouraging you as a team leader, a manager, a leader, CEO, if you are listening to this as an employee, and you've seen areas that your CEO could, or your leader could really do a bit better, get the YouTube video, send it to or direct him to him or her to the LinkedIn post, and just let them listen. You can change the environment. And you may say, Delroy, you've got no idea the environment which I'm working. You're right, I don't know. But what I do know is that no matter how tough things are, you can change the environment. It takes courage, it takes guts, and quite often the most effective leaders I know are individuals who were reluctant leaders, but they stepped up to the plate. And my model, which I try to practice, of service, innovation, develop psychological safety, develop others, and introspection. I'm still refining on it. I'm still working on it. You can change the environment so that the people who are there at your work, they want to do a good day's work. But if their leadership is right, you don't have to get the best out of them. They will voluntarily give of their best to you. And they're my closing words to you as we look at the possibility of creating a healthy place to work, erasing gaslighting, a challenge for CEOs and leaders, also incredibly rewarding. So thank you all very much indeed for your time. If you found it useful, please feel to share. Thank you for those. I spoke with somebody last night. There's a quote that I sent out and they forwarded it to a friend who was going through a particularly difficult time. If you know of individuals who are going through tough times, please, and you think they might find this helpful, watch the video with them, sit with them, talk it through with them, stop it, ask questions, interrogate it a bit more. That's how you get the best out of some of the stuff I'm producing. So go well, enjoy the rest of your night and the rest of your week. Go well, take care, and I'll see you next week at 7 o'clock. And again, thank you for Daniela in Canada, Daniela Petrosky, who gave me the idea for dealing with gaslighting, but also working with CEOs as well. So thank you very, very much indeed. And I have sought her permission for me to kind of give her a shout out. So there you go. Take care. Wish you well. Bye-bye.